Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, Earthlings and English-speaking aliens receiving this somewhere in deep space. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, the podcast where we explore something of life in the future. Although, as a disclaimer, we should say that if you are an English-speaking alien, then this faint whisper of a signal is potentially somewhere between 50 to 100 million Earth years old. And if that is the case, then here is the voice of a man who died long ago. It's Matthew Dickerson. Say hi to the aliens, Matt.
Well, I'm actually a bit intrigued. Are you sure they need to be English-speaking aliens? Surely they've got some device that allows them to listen to...
To translate English to alien.
Absolutely, why not?
Wow.
We always assume, I don't know why we assume this, but we always assume that aliens are so far in advance of us, and maybe that's because they
What
visit...
if they've just got some dodgy wireless that is able to pick up a radio signal and that's all?
And then they aren't actually that advanced, so then they'd be hearing something that looks or sounds like a foreign language to them.
And they'd be getting all excited about aliens way off in deep space because that's us.
When are those aliens going to visit us? We're working on it. We'll get
or
there.
They could just be bacterial slime, in a pond somewhere.
Probably more likely, isn't it? So this week, talking about different languages, there was the celebration just a few days ago of the 50th anniversary of Wrigley's chewing gum, but not so much the chewing gum, but the packaging. The very first barcode was scanned.
The language of the barcode.
That's right, the language of the barcode. The very first barcode was scanned in an Ohio supermarket. So it's the first product ever to be scanned with a barcode. Now, when you think about that, so that's 50 years ago, to be accurate, 26th of June 1974. Before that, just think about what used to happen. Someone had a fun job, and I used to have one of these little devices for one of my early businesses, the machine that...
Little sticker clicker thing.
That's it, and you'd put in the dials and you'd put the amount that you wanted of that product, $8.79 or whatever it was, and you'd click and it'd put a little sticker on there and you'd wipe that onto the actual product. So you go and sticker all those products. Some people who weren't maybe quite so honest. I remember from school used to go and peel off stickers, and the checkout person didn't know that $50 product was really being paid, or $10 for a $50 product. So you didn't know the price of everything in the store. So you had the stickers on all the stores for a start. Then the cashiers had to actually type in the amount, $2.75 and $5.88, and make sure they got it all right as they went through, and then it got the bill at the end. Oh, hold on, that seems too much. Are you sure? So you go back through the shopping basket and find all those different products. And then stock take. Imagine stock take. My wife talks about her father's business, that they used to do stock take. They used to count the nuts, bolts and washers in their stock take.
Individual
ones, that's right.
Wow.
So that was a fun job, and that's why I think her father had kids so they could get them involved in the stock take.
But remember, in those days, we were just used to doing things the long way, and
Correct.
that's just how it was. You knew that when you were doing stock take, you had to count all of the bolts.
We didn't know much better, and we didn't know about any sort of automation. It was just, that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
Once a year, I guess.
Laborious. And now to think back on it, it's just like, you did what?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the barcode, 1948, was when Norman Woodland and Bernard Silver conceptualised the idea on a beach, of all places. They had so
many good ideas come off a lazy day
on the beach.
On the beach, yeah.
Tried some sticks in the sand, and they worked out that maybe they could do something. So then, the 3rd of April 1973, the industry said, this is the US retail sector, said, let's create a formalised system for barcodes, which is then what led to Wrigley's chewing gum being scanned. And, of course, on the back of all that, we've now gone to 2D barcodes, or more commonly called QR codes. So we've got much more information, because really a barcode typically, depending on exactly which system, but typically it's about 13 or maybe 15 numeric numbers. So do you have non-numeric numbers? Anyway, so 13 numerals in a sequence. And what I used to explain to people sometimes about barcode readers was it would be just like you took your keyboard, typed in 30 numbers and pressed enter. That's effectively what happens every time you go click on a barcode reader. Obviously, QR codes can fit a lot more in a very clever way, but it's quite interesting to think that it's only 50 years ago, which 50 years is a long time, but it's just ubiquitous now, isn't it? Everything, every product you've got has got a barcode, including those individual washers at your local hardware store have all got barcodes on those individual washers now.
It's crazy.
So it's quite interesting. So there we go, 50 years of another language, fairly well accepted around the world.
Fantastic. Well, in today's episode, we've got some more fantastic stories. We have some great news for cat lovers. No spoiler alerts here, but if you are less than excited about changing kitty litter, then the future is a great place to be. Now, we've also got a couple of stories where the line between robot and human gets a bit blurred, just a little bit more, and everything old is new again as we give the comparatively ancient art of Morse code a dose of CPR today. But here is our first story for those who love a little greenery about the house. Just how green is your thumb? Is it merely a touch of green here and there, or is it green enough to, say, turn your entire house or apartment into a small slice of the Daintree rainforest? For a while there at our place, we had trouble keeping even the plastic plants going. But if you are ready to step up the game on the indoor plants front, then a company called Willow may have a very neat piece of tech for you. Matt.
Surely there's a solution here with technology, because I haven't got a very green thumb. There's not many green plants around my place.
Yeah,
and I like the fact that you struggle with plastic plants as well, because
Yep.
you know you're really struggling
I
there.
love the idea of indoor plants, but they're yet to work at our house.
Well, this might be the solution for you, because one of the problems, of course, is that we forget to water them.
Yeah.
But we also have other problems like watering them too much, which sounds like a crazy concept, but you can, of course, drown a plant. What you really need to know is, well, what is the moisture level of my soil? Is it getting enough light? Is it sitting near a window? Is
Yeah,
there
that's
somewhere
the other
there?
thing, the light availability.
Exactly right. What about the temperature? Have I got it at the wrong spot in the house? Maybe it's too warm, too cold in my house. Humidity, should I put it outside for a little while? All these questions I don't really know the answer to, and I don't really have enough time to research it. So I just
Exactly. But you might notice the plant's struggling, but only when it's too late, you know? It's
But
just
when it is-
breathing its last breath.
That's right. But when it is struggling, you don't know which one of all those different variables
Yeah,
is
that's right.
the variable
What
you've
have I
got to
done
change.
wrong?
That's right. So what Willow's got for us all, which is fantastic, is a lovely little sensor that you put into the soil. It's only fairly small. It looked like it was about, say, 2 or 3 centimetres in diameter across and maybe 8 centimetres tall.
Wow.
Some sensors at the bottom. Stick that in the soil, and of course it will measure all of these things for you: the moisture in the soil, the light intensity it's receiving, temperature, humidity. And it's not a real bit of tech if it doesn't have an app, of course. So it's got an app. It gives you an update on all this information, so you can look at that, or
right.
you can also get alerts to say, hey, I'm struggling here, I need a bit
So
of
your watch
moisture.
is going to buzz, not only for all the other notifications, but to
right.
tell you that the plants are a little bit stressed.
So while you're ignoring all those other ones, and you ignore this one too possibly, but no, don't ignore it. Have a look at it, and then you can see what it is. But it gets even better because you also use your app to take a photo of your plant. And then your app will say, I know what sort of plant that is. So based on that specific plant, I know what it should need in terms of its nutrient levels, its moisture levels,
How
etc.
cool's that?
That's even better. So it's not just a random, I think I'm getting enough light, but I'm not quite sure. It's this plant needs this much light in an average week or an average day, so please move me somewhere where I've got a bit more light or a bit less light maybe, who knows.
So there are literally no more excuses for killing indoor plants.
It does sound like it's getting harder and harder, doesn't it, to say, I didn't know about that one. The devices, not surprisingly, are dust, dirt, water resistant, so that's kind of makes sense because you're going to be in an environment. They're going to be outside and get a bit wet, or not outside, but not in an enclosed environment and get a bit wet from time to time. And you get a nice, easy scoring system, so you get a certain score to tell you how things are going. So if the score drops a bit low, then you can start to investigate which of the various things. So I think the idea here is pretty good. More importantly, if you do want to start to grow your forest in the house, you can have up to 40 of these devices communicating with your app at the same time. And they actually rely on a hub. So they have a Bluetooth hub, so they're communicating around the house via Bluetooth, so very low energy, much better for battery life. And then the hub, which is plugged into mains power, is what will actually communicate back with your app. So it gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you the communication back to your app, but also all the devices have got very long battery life. So I think that's not a bad option.
Very cool.
They're not too expensive. You can buy, obviously, you want to have lots of these plants around. So $200 will give you the actual hub, the initial hub, and 5 sensors, so it gets you going. There's different options below that and above that, but it's not a bad way to get started with a few plants around the home.
And sorry, did you say you can have up to 4 hubs?
Up to 40 plants.
40 plants.
Yeah, so you have one hub per 40 plants. So if you've got more than 40
right.
plants, you need to buy a second hub for that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's not too bad. 40 plants around the home. That's getting pretty serious, isn't it? That's about 39 more serious than I've ever
you
been.
can junglify quite well with that.
That's right, yeah. So it's a good idea, and it just comes back to that whole thing that we talk about so often. We're getting technology to give us information. How we deal with that information, what we do with that is all part of the challenge for us as humans, but getting the information in the right format is really important.
But this thing won't save you when you're on holidays because you're too far away to be able to water the plants. Unless you can rig up an indoor sprinkler system that's computerised.
That's right, without doing the rest of the house at the same time. But maybe you could check some of the specs before you go on holidays. So you know
that'd be a good idea.
It looks like it's got enough moisture and a little bit extra on that. So probably not perfect, but you can always ring a friend and say, a really important job for you today, James, when you're around my place.
Just received an alert about my maidenhair fern.
Quick, go in. Here's where the key is. Actually, here's my electronic code to get into the place. Go for it.
So at our place, we haven't had such a great track record of keeping plants alive, but we've done pretty okay looking after our cat. Granted, Gus pretty much looks after himself, excepting, of course, that he's pretty terrible at changing his own litter box. Matt, it's 2024 and I'm sick of having this filthy, stinking kitty litter. What good news have you got for me?
Well, the good news is that, yes, you're right. Cats take much less in terms of looking after than plants.
That's right.
They just appear when they need food or water.
That's right, and they won't let you forget that they need food or water.
That's right. And they tend to disappear after they've gone to the toilet sometimes.
Yep.
And that is a bit of a problem because you get presents left around the place, and we've talked before about some of the robotic vacuum cleaners which don't really love the idea of deposits being left, or even just toes in the middle of the night aren't great for that sort of thing. So we want to train our cats to go to the toilet somewhere, when most of the time we're pretty successful with that, but it still has something somewhere that smells a bit, and you still got to clean it up until you get the PaWz automatic smart litter box, and PaWz spelled PaWz there, just if you go searching that. What it is a device that looks a bit like an astronaut's helmet, so it's kind of that size-ish, about 64 centimetres tall, sits there somewhere nicely out of the road maybe, but you teach the cat to go in there to go to the toilet. The first thing it does is it goes in and the door closes behind it, because why not? A bit of privacy.
Yeah.
Maybe cats don't like you sitting there watching them go to the toilet.
Just have a look on their face
That's right.
while they're doing their business, and you're exactly right.
And there's
they
no
don't want you watching.
They don't, and there's no camera inside, so you can't see them. There is an infrared sensor inside though, so the box knows not to take some of its actions while the cat's inside. So presumably the cat goes in there, you teach the cat to go there to go to the toilet. It does that. When it leaves, there's a bit of purple UV for sterilisation, so that seems like a nice thing. But it does scoop the deposit into a little tray or a little sealed container that then keeps it with odourless because it's sealed up, and it's got enough to take a few weeks of deposits if you want to go that long, so you can go on holidays.
Yeah, wow.
And then finally you take the little sealed container and drop that in the bin. Job done. No messy hands, no smells around the place. Away you go. I'm not quite sure how it handles the liquid version of waste. This is more to deal with the solid type waste. But,
Yeah, right.
But certainly there's probably some advantage for the liquid waste, but it's really for the solid. So the door closes, goes to the toilet, into a little container. The door presumably opens up again after it's finished, and the cat goes on about its day, and you can have a nice odourless house and also nice and easy to clean up. You change the bag and then away you go again every few weeks and job done. It depends how many cats you've got. You might have 40 cats, same as the number of plants in your place, so maybe you might need to change it on a daily basis. But if you've got a smaller number of cats...
If you've got 40 cats, you've got to see someone.
Maybe.
You need some special help.
Maybe cleaning up the litter is not the most important thing in your life at the time.
Well, I'm sold. Here's a kind word of advice for those organising travel plans. These days, you've got to be very, very careful about your online interactions when making bookings. Scamming has stepped up its game, and it's all thanks to the miracle of AI. Remember, it's a miracle for the bad guys too, folks. Matt, shonky dealers have always been out there. It's just that they're a lot harder to spot these days. Am I right?
It's harder to spot. When you got that message through that said some form of broken English with some bad spelling that supposedly came from Booking.com or similar,
Yep.
you thought...
And the logo just didn't look quite right.
No, that's right. And you thought, I reckon a large organisation, a large travel organisation has got someone employed there that can probably speak English correctly and just checks the grammar and make sure everything looks okay. It seems like a pretty simple thing to do. If you're a scammer, just a lesson out there for scammers, surely you can get this part right to try and scam people. Well, unfortunately, they are getting it right now.
Yeah.
Booking.com reported a 500 to 900% increase in travel scams over the last 18 months, and they're largely blaming AI because you can put in your broken English, you can put in the intent of your message to your AI tool, and it will give you back perfectly written English with no grammatical errors, no spelling errors. And then you can say, can you make that message more persuasive, please? And of course, it will come back with a more persuasive message. So you're getting these messages coming through now with a call to action, with something that sounds too good to be true, fantastic. And they're also smart enough not to make the prices stupidly, ridiculously cheap, which is another bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
Flights from Sydney to London for $50. Gee, I'd love that flight, but I'm not convinced that that's really the right price. So they normally make them maybe 10, 20% cheaper, so it's a pretty good deal. And I'm thinking about doing that, so I don't want to miss out on it. So I'll jump on and I'll do that deal now. So phishing scams, obviously, is what these are. Phishing scams, basically, they're sending out this information. You're clicking on the link because it all looks legitimate. And as you said, the logo, they look legitimate now. Even the website, if you click on the link, the website looks exactly like the website. Look in the address bar, you might see that there's just a subtle difference. Or maybe the letter L is replaced with the number 1. So there's little things like that which you might just pick up, but you're probably not looking for that.
No,
I want to grab
and
this
sometimes
deal.
if you're tired or if you've had a hard day or whatever, and you see these things, you think, oh yeah, no, it's time for a trip or whatever. You just end up clicking on the link.
Yeah.
The moral of the story is just don't click on the link.
That's sad,
Go
isn't
to
it?
the website and look them up.
When you see the special, then exactly right, go to the website and then look it up from that perspective. So you click on these links, it's got this wonderful special. You click on there to pay, of course you pay, and then you're waiting for your tickets or your holiday or whatever it might be to come back. And you're waiting and you're waiting. And then you go and chase them up. And, of course, they've changed the name. They've changed the website. It's disappeared. And then you start to realise you've got that sinking feeling in your stomach to go, I'm not sure that was really Booking.com. Where was that? On the flip side, companies like Booking.com do use AI to find out some of these fake websites.
Oh, really?
They actually have some tools where they use those to go looking for various fake sites and then obviously get those taken down. So
Fighting fire with fire.
Exactly
AI with
right.
AI.
But then it's just this leapfrog process, isn't it? Right, we've worked out that one and they'll come up with something else. All right, we've worked out that one now, and away you go from there. I mean, authorities are trying to catch up, and there are countries around the world where they're trying to use regulations to stop this. But a lot of the things, because we've got such a global marketplace now, you might stop it in Australia, but someone from overseas, they're not really adhering to Australian laws, and so they're coming in and still scamming people. So I think the whole idea here is around travel scam. It's such an easy thing that everyone's attracted to. Not everyone can go on that wonderful world tour every second week. So you're looking out for things where you can actually make it cost effective. And after COVID, everyone went, wow, that was really bad when we couldn't travel. So you're looking out for specials, and people are still looking out for them now. So you're right. Just you have to be.
Sharks are out there in the water. They're looking for you. They want to gobble you up.
That's exactly it. And again, you're spot on. It's just, I can't even give you any definitive tips because there's so many little things they're getting better at now. So you just have to have those alerts in your mind going, I'll assume it's a scam.
Yes.
And then prove to me that it's not.
Yeah, prove to me that this isn't a scam. Yeah, everything that we do.
That's right. It's a bit sad. It's a bit of a sad way to go through life, but that's where we're at now, unfortunately. So travel schemes in particular, be alert for those.
Deet da da deet da 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 deet 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 da 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 da. A Morse code, folks. A revolution back in its day. Suddenly, messengers on horseback were queuing on the unemployment office as the telegraph took hold with its real-time, long-distance communication. Of course, every dog has its day, and even Morse coders found themselves eventually becoming fewer and further between. But the art of Morse code is not dead yet, folks. Would you believe that there is still a very practical purpose for Morse code, and therefore a need to generate and decode messages just as fluidly as speech? Matt, give us all the lowdown on the dots and the dashes in the year 2024.
So did you say anything with your dots and dashes then?
Yes, and I'm going to leave you to work that out.
Well, the only thing I ever know off the top of my head is ... ... which is...
Sorry, I was using the data deets.
Yeah, right.
So,
I was going the dots and dashes. So that's SOS. That's all I know. Is 3 dots is S, 3 dashes is O.
Tuned in for that.
That's
No,
right.
I can't tell you exactly what that was, but I'm going to go and look it up later on.
Oh, you had me going, the fact that you had some secret Easter egg there for us. I was going
But
to
what
look it up.
impresses me is we were watching that movie with Tom Hanks in it called Greyhound,
Yeah.
and about this World War II ship helping the convoys go across the Atlantic, and the Morse code, and these guys are just like looking at these lights going, yep, come back with the message. Now, it's all in the script, of course, but there are guys that could do that.
There are guys.
Could read flashes and dots and dashes and all that sort of stuff and come back with a message just fluidly.
Exactly right. They could have a conversation literally, and good people, or not good people, people that were very good at Morse code back in the day, were about 60 words per minute. So it's not too bad. I mean, people can type faster than that now, but 60 words per minute is a reasonable typing speed. So to have a conversation with dots and dashes at 60 words per minute, which those operators, those very clever and very skilled operators with lots of practice could do that.
Yeah.
They'd be fun at a birthday party, wouldn't they? Sitting around and just having a little conversation between themselves.
Just hand signals or whatever. But who needs Morse code in 2024? We got text messaging. We got, everyone's got a mobile phone in their pocket that can make a call.
Yeah, you've got so many different things, haven't you? But it's quite interesting that the US Navy and the Coast Guard still use a bit of Morse code for very specific purposes. So it's still a little bit used there, not much. Of course, it goes back to the 1830s when Samuel Morse actually first came up with the concept. And when we started to get our electronics to the point where you couldn't take an entire voice and send that over some distance, they worked out how to send very short dots or dashes. So it depends how long you held the controller down for. So
Do you reckon there are any horseback messengers that were saying, this will never catch on? Our job's safe. We'll be here forever.
Well, I do
riding
wonder
between towns with little rolled up bits of paper.
I wonder about the whole idea that you talked about there, that there were people out there who were horrified when Morse code was starting to be overtaken by other technologies, and there would have been probably some union somewhere that said, no, we need Morse code because we've got these operators. What are they going to do once Morse code is dead? As we hear about so many different technologies as we go through history.
Do you know, my grandfather sent a telegram to my brother on his wedding.
And actually a real telegram?
Yeah, real telegram. I'm sure it was during maybe it was I've probably got my wires crossed there, but anyway, but there was definitely a telegram sent at a wedding or a big function or whatever. But anyway,
and I loved it was you'd pay per letter or per word with a telegram, so you had to make it as short as possible. It was broken English, maybe some of the first scams. So it's actually interesting. There's a guy that's actually created a do-it-yourself Morse code trainer, and it can actually pick up audio or lights or just tapping and actually do real-time translation of the message. So just the same as the people in Greyhound in the movie or real operators would translate that on the fly, this little device does that, and it's got a small LCD screen and the words come up. So you can put it somewhere and listen. So they could use this device to listen to what you said at the beginning, if that was actually in fact anything that was being said, or tap away on something. So you can have the audio, you can even have lights flashing, and it would pick up those and translate that into the words. So quite fascinating what we've done with modern technology. So they talk about this being able to do 60 words per minute, the same as human operators as such. So that's pretty impressive. It can also be adapted to do it the other way around. Now that's pretty clever, because the first thing it's got to do is take our spoken words, take the spoken words, break it down into the actual words, and then break those letters down. So once you've got the letters there, from a computer perspective, pretty easy to have a translation from each letter goes to so many dots or dashes for each of those parts. But it's still got to take the spoken word and do that. So you could actually have someone speaking at one end, someone speaking at the other end, and it being sent via Morse code. So that could be a very simple way of having lights flashing, or maybe two kids in tents flashing lights at each other in the middle of the night.
On Cub Camp. Now, I just, also thinking about, because talking about translating messages, a lot of the time I thought with Morse code, they took away some of the unimportant words, the ands or the its, the thes. Whereas if you're delivering something in speech, and whether or not this can pick up or knows how to translate all that sort of stuff.
It would still translate the words, would be my perspective.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you were doing it, you were just translating the crucial information. A bit like telegrams. When you saw those telegrams come through, they were often some various words with a few connectors removed.
Well,
and
when
then
you're paying by the letter.
Correct. You try and make it as short as possible. So maybe that was the precursor to text messaging where we had a certain number of characters. So that was a bit of practice there. When are you going to use this in a practical sense? Not sure. The only practical sense... Oh, I did think of that. I did think of kids flashing lights at each other. Maybe someone with certain disabilities that had problems in terms of actually being able to move hands, type on a keyboard, but they had enough movement to be able to tap on something. Maybe that, but I'm struggling a little bit. I think it was just one of those things people said, hey, this sounds like cool fun. I wonder if James and Matthew will talk about this if we're going to do this.
Well, it's breathing life into Morse code again. It's reinvigorating it.
Indeed. And
giving it a 2024 slant.
Can you imagine Samuel Morse saying, jump forward 180 years or so and see what we're
still using my code?
Well, to see what we've got now and then say to him, you know what, we're still using Morse code. And he'd be going exactly that. He'd say, what? Surely we've moved on. That was revolutionary at the time, but that was 180 years ago,
Even
guys.
I accepted that wasn't going to happen.
That's right.
I would love to have a conversation with Samuel Morse. Playing politics has always been a bit of a contentious area. In a campaign, candidates reach into the public psyche to tweak at just the right nerves and secure those votes in the upcoming elections. It's all part of the game. But you may have noticed that in the last 10 years or so, the heat has really turned up in politics, from governments at the local all the way to the national level and even on an international level. I wonder just how many Aussies have no opinion at all about what is happening in the US currently. Now, passions run high in modern politics. Matt, I guess this is just what happens when political parties in democracies have access to large data sets and, well, easy, widespread communication.
And there's this concept, James, called the marketplace of ideas. And it's this whole concept that pretend you had a marketplace where there were lots of products being sold, lots of things, trinkets, food products, all sorts of different things. And through this whole process, the best products would come to the fore. So over a series of weeks or months, you go, hey, where's those other products? Where's those Morse code translators? They're not being sold anymore. They weren't that popular. And hey, these fruit and veggies, they seem to be going really well. Or this guy makes fantastic bread. So the best products, when you go to any of those markets on a regular basis, you see some products come and they're not there soon after. Other products that are really good ones stay there. And this whole concept of a marketplace of ideas is how, in a perfect world, the democracy of any place should work, where ideas are put forward and different ideas are discussed. And that's assuming you've got everyone being able to access this marketplace and everyone can have free and open speech. And then these great ideas rise to the top. So in a perfect democratic process, the best ideas should come from us all discussing these things. So fantastic. But
it seems like the best ideas aren't necessarily rising to the front.
No, and that's where the problem. And this is this whole concept about the neurotargeting of different data sets on different people in different data sets is corrupting this whole marketplace of ideas. So if we look at social media, it should, in a perfect world, allow the marketplace of ideas to work. It's the perfect sharing concept of the marketplace of ideas, rather than a few of us sitting around the pub solving the problems of the world, or maybe going to some sort of public forum and having a big discussion. Social media, we can all put our ideas forward and all the best ideas will come to the top. But we don't see that happen, apart from the fact people are very nasty on social media. Ignore that for one moment. But you do get a whole bunch of misinformation.
Well, it's how an idea is sold, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
right.
What becomes more important is how to sell an idea rather than whether or not the idea has any factual basis.
And how often do we see that, where there's just no logic, no truthfulness, just so much misinformation around these, and these ideas start to rise to the top.
The crime is up in through these cities in the States, when all the stats seem to be saying, no, the crime has actually come down. And I don't want to get into that debate at all, but people are saying, oh, no, that's all misinformation, or the stats aren't reported correctly, and that's all part of this game.
That's right, and you only need a few people to have a strong voice in there to influence a lot of people.
We go on the feels more than
the
information.
You've hit the magic word there is feel. So what they're doing with this neurotargeting is basically taking these large data sets and they're appealing directly to emotions, and that kind of sidelines reason, logic, trustworthiness, because our emotions are so incredibly strong. So that's exactly what they're doing. They're ignoring all the normal things. Let's put forward pros and cons for this idea. How can this look like we can get to the best solution? It's no, I'm trying to influence what you think, so I'm going to focus straight on your emotions and see what I can do with that. So when you start to do that, and obviously Cambridge Analytica, the issues they had back in 2016 were probably very successful from an election campaign, but obviously very naughty in terms of the way they use that data, and obviously they've been in a bit of trouble, and I think they folded back in about 2018, so they lasted only a couple of years after that, and after that came out. But it goes way back to some US intelligence experiments with brain imaging and propaganda. And obviously during some world wars, we know propaganda was a big weapon that was used. It wasn't just about the physical weapons. It was like convincing the public that everything that was happening was okay. So you didn't really see the true story. And who knows? We still don't know what the true story was really, because everyone told their version of the story.
That's right.
And so the propaganda was obviously focused on. But now it's really about deceptive tactics using personal data to basically make people be influenced. And we get sucked into it. Facebook surveys. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I'll complete that survey. They're just trying to get more information out of you. They're trying to mine information, and we get sucked in so easily, especially if that Facebook survey has got a prize at the end or a potential prize at the end of it all. Then we're happy to sell our soul for a potential $50 gift voucher or whatever it might be. But when we start talking about elections, now we've got a big US election happening this year. We've got probably this year, maybe early next year, an Australian election. The data mining has become so sophisticated, and the way they're using it to target our emotion, to target how we think about things, is incredibly scary. So what do we do about it? Well, I don't know if we can do anything about it as an individual. We can think about how we can respond to this, how we can give our data away, and how we can look at things very analytically, and having some science background or some science processes in place to analyse that data is incredibly important. But most people, they probably don't look at it that way because they're emotions.
Well, yeah, we just have to learn how to become more discerning in how we absorb information. And does this sound right? Is the question we've got to continually ask ourselves. And am I just fishing for things I want to hear or don't want to hear?
Yep.
So it works both ways. Yeah, just having a mature thought pattern about it is a very tricky thing, because it's easy to get caught up in the feels.
And critical thinking. I mean, I'd love there to be a compulsory course at school. You've got to do English,
science.
You've got to do maths. It's called science, but it's not compulsory. That's the problem. I would love science to be compulsory, but critical thinking, because one of the things I think is when you see some of this content online, just assess that critically. And when some people tell me some crazy ideas sometimes, one of the first things I say is, what's the motivation behind that? The things you're saying, why would that person do that? Can you think of why that person might do it, rather than just go, I know what they're doing. Why would they do that? Yeah. What's the motivation? What would make them do that? And if you can't think of that motivation, a bit like when you watch a crime show on TV, they've got to find the body, usually is a pretty important part of the murder that's occurred. They want to find the murder weapon, but they also, when they're going and tagging some person, they normally want to find a motive. That seems to be an important part of that whole process.
Well, the other thing is like, and this is the problem with pseudoscience, and I'm going to just reach out to the flat earthers here, just stop it. But there have been some things that I've seen posted by flat earthers, and you think, oh, wow, yeah, no, how am I going to explain that? Or moon landing conspiracy theorists, they make a really good point there. And it's not until you step back and you give yourself a bit of processing time to think about it, you think, oh, hang on, no, this is the flaw in their argument. This is the other things that I know about that. No, it doesn't work because of da-da-da. So having these conspiracies and whatnot, and these different ways of interpreting data or science, I've grown. They're all very tricky in how they select the data and how they select how it's presented. And so it's all about selling the idea. Yeah. And so it's easy to get caught up in the sale. And so you have to step back and think again sometimes. And
I remember talking to a political person once many years ago, and there was a survey on some local newspaper. And they said that they went in, they were quite upfront with me about it, they went in and they filled in the survey 100 times because they wanted to influence the result. And I said, well, wouldn't you want to know what people thought about that as a general survey? Wouldn't that be of interest? No, I want them to think the way I want to think rather than let's get a true reaction from the public. And I thought that seemed a bit perverse, a bit backward.
Yeah.
Surely you would want to know. Yeah, counterproductive. Surely you would know what people think. The only thing we can do about it really is just have a slight alert going in our mind when we see messages, especially when we see some of these political messages, and just say, are they trying to grab my emotion? Are they trying to make that very emotional? Or are they actually trying to give me some ideas, give me some sort of future? What vision can I see from these people? And break it down from an emotional perspective and try and analyse it critically, which is very tough to do sometimes. Because emotions are very easy to trigger if you know how to trigger them. And that's what all this data that's being gathered is actually doing. So keep an eye out for those political messages. Keep an eye out from afar, from Australia over to America, and just see how those messages go. And don't worry about seeing the data, whether it's truthful or not, because sometimes they don't worry about that. Just see how they're trying to target those emotions. It's quite interesting.
Researchers at Stanford Uni in California are developing a robot that learns not so much by programming, but rather by mimicking humans now. Matt, it's bad enough when your kids pick up on your bad habits, but now we're developing robots to do the same thing? What's that about?
And don't we see that with our kids?
I know.
Why are you doing that? And then you realise...
all the things that I wanted you to pick up from me.
That's right. So where did you get that habit from? And then you realise you're doing exactly the same thing yourself. So, gee, that's annoying. That means I'm annoyed with myself. No, that can't be right. So surely that's okay now. So go for it. But it is interesting. Normally you'd expect lots of programming, lots of lines of code to be written for a robot to do something, whatever that might be.
Instructions have got to be clear.
Obviously. And breaking that down, I remember being at a conference one time and we had to write an instruction set on how to juggle. And when you start to think about that, okay, throw the balls up in the air. So the guy sitting at the front of the little session we're doing said, okay, good. He took 3 balls, threw them up in the air. So did I just juggle? No, hold on. Okay, now throw the balls up in the air and right, so he threw them up and caught them. Am I juggling? No. So just going through the steps just to juggle. Juggle's not the most complicated thing in the world, but writing a set of instructions. So by the end of this little session, we wrote a set of instructions to juggle, and holy truth, it was complicated. When you think, if you're just talking to someone, you just go, just throw them up and catch them like this, and you can show them, oh, hold on, that's what they're doing with robots now. They're saying, watch me juggle, now you learn how to do it. Yeah. They chose a whole range of different things. I thought the things they thought to train this robot on were quite different.
Well, how many teachers of the past have said, just watch me?
That's right, do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So they taught these humanoid robot, and it's coming out of Stanford University, and they quote it stood at 5'9", and I get annoyed when I see Imperial. In fact, I remember Mythbusters, one of the things they were talking about on Mythbusters one day, they said our greatest frustration is that we're mainly for an American audience, so we've got to use imperial measurements, whereas the rest of the scientific world uses metric, so I want to use metric. So I'm quoting 5'9" just because that's what Stanford quoted. But they taught this humanoid 5'9" robot to play the piano. That's pretty impressive. Watch me play the piano. Well, you've got to read music and play the piano. Maybe they just copied a particular song. So I'm reckon a robot could do that, copy a particular song. Play tennis, boxing, putting on a shoe. That sounds more complicated than it probably is.
That's another juggling thing.
It is, yeah, that's right. Walking, playing ping pong, typing. So a whole range of different things. And they achieved a success rate varied from 60 to 100% for these various things. So that sounds pretty impressive. It took about 40 hours of human motion data for the robot to learn. So think about that. Watch me play tennis for 40 hours, and then it's right, away it goes. And one of the things, you've heard me talk about it before, one of the things that I absolutely want in my household is a humanoid robot to help around the house, in particular picking up the clothes off the kids' floor and taking them to the washing machine. But I don't know how many years they have to watch that bedroom to get 40 hours of data from my kids. I reckon it'll be a lifetime watching them before they finally racked up 40 hours. So it does sound quite fascinating. So the particular robot they've got was built relatively inexpensively with a whole range of components and parts that are already out there, a bit of a combination of parts. And when I say relatively inexpensively, about $107,000, so not dirt cheap, but you would expect millions would be a reasonable number for a robot that could learn to do things. But just by mimicking without all the programming needed, it was really just the hardware you're paying for rather than the programming. Yeah. The prediction for the whole humanoid robot market is that it'll be worth about $154 billion by the year 2035. And if they can get it right, if someone comes out with a humanoid robot, absolutely, I think there is a huge amount of potential there. But imagine if you got that robot and it was, here's a robot, it's clean, it's vanilla, it doesn't do anything at all. Take it and then teach it what you want it to be taught. Again, the way you do things, the way you cook a meal, the way you pick up the kids' clothes, whatever.
Wax on, wax off, paint the fence, all that sort of stuff. I'm doing Miss Miyagi with him straight away. That's the first thing I'm doing.
That's right. You need your fence painted. But I think it would be actually quite interesting to see how it did things, because you'd learn all these things, like your kids copying off you. You'd learn all these things that I didn't think I did that when I was doing the dishes, or did that when I was cooking a meal. But you'd find out these funny habits you had, and then you'd be saying, no, don't do it that way. And it'd almost be like, well, that's how you did it, so that's how I'm doing it. But it sounds like a fascinating thing. So we're getting closer, James. We're getting closer. I know I've got one of the radio hosts I do interviews with who keeps hassling me for the hoverboard, and I have said to him that I'm a long way away from telling him one day, we've got the hoverboard. But the humanoid robot, I'm keen to see one. I'm 5 years. I'm giving it 5 years, and I'm going to have one in my house, James.
And we are going to use Asimov's rules, aren't we, please?
I hope so. But hold on. If they're learning from what you do, maybe those rules are going to go out the window, because maybe we don't follow those same rules.
Oh, goodness me. Having students hack into a school's IT system is not unheard of. It's not common, I hope, but it does happen. For the poor staff, students and administrators, it's a nightmare, though, because personal data, grades, reports, teaching and assessment resources, they're all accessible and unfair game. One school in Perth has had an episode recently that serves as a lesson to everyone, Matt.
Well, I can't condone hacking, obviously. I can't condone kids getting into the school system. It's the ultimate thing you see on the movies. You want your grade fixed up, James? We'll just give you an A for that assignment. There we go. I'll just hack in and change that. So I can't condone any of that. But I'm also not convinced that I love the idea that these students were expelled, because they've obviously got some talents. So if these talents could be shifted across and used for good rather than for evil, they were in the school system for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
They managed to get in there, spent time in there. That probably exposes some cracks in the system, some areas where maybe they can be tightened up.
3 years.
But maybe, so from year 8, they got into the system in year 8, and they were still in there by year 11. I don't know how they got caught finally. Maybe there were about 4 students. Maybe they got perfect grades for those 3 years, and the teacher's going, I ask questions in class, they never know the answers, but their grades are just perfect. Maybe it was a bit like the Lance Armstrong concept when Lance won Tour de France and maybe did it in a way that wasn't quite legit. Then good on you, France. Just retire now and you've got a Tour de France. But to win 7 in a row, people go, that's unheard of. What's going on here? And, of course, it all fell down. So maybe they were going too far with their process. But surely this would be a chance to say to these kids, okay, how'd you get in? What did you do? Tell us the process. Tell us what you did in there. And then start to have some processes that you improve in your system to make sure the next group of Year 8 students can't get in. No matter how many blocks you put in place, I find kids are quite ingenious. They don't know, well, they do know good from bad from good, but they don't necessarily know the things that they're meant to not be thinking about. So they attack things in different ways. And I remember I gave my son a task one day many years ago, and I said, all right, I need you to do this and this and this for me. And I came back a couple of hours later and he'd done it in a completely different way. And I went, well, hold on. And then I thought about it, I went, well, you've got the result I want and you did it really quickly, but what about this? He said, well, that didn't seem important in the process because you needed this at the end. And I went, yeah, actually, you're right. But that wouldn't be how I would have thought of it.
The student. Yeah, that's right.
Because you've got all these ideas that you've created in your mind over years and years and years.
Yeah.
So for an adult, a teacher, an IT security firm to say, let's stop these kids getting in, well, maybe they're not thinking about it the same way as kids. Whereas the kids say, oh, no, we just did this because that seemed like the obvious way about it. So maybe use these kids in some way. I don't know that any school would love these kids. If they're expelled from one school, they've still got to finish school. I don't know any other school would say, we welcome you, but they should maybe and say, we've got some pretty strict rules in place here, but let's use your obvious talents and see how we can use them for some sort of good purposes, or to stop those Year 8 kids. Go and have a chat to them, will you, and see what they're doing to try and get in. Because as soon as we block this hole...
Oh, they could become the grass.
That's right.
The narcs.
Go and have a chat to those guys.
Yeah.
So it does point out, though, really, doesn't it? We don't think that our systems, we don't think anyone cares about my data, my information, but whatever organisation it is, whatever individual it is, someone out there is maybe interested in what you've got and they might be having a look at it. So,
well, the more we talk, the more we learn data is power.
Yeah, that's right. And even just the whole idea that you've got something that's pretty innocent, no one cares about it, two-factor authentication comes through from some company. Oh, no one cares about my data. I won't turn that on. You almost want to be thinking, my data is the red button that starts the nuclear war. I better lock it down. I better be sensible about it. And I've seen some ads recently, some quite clever ads where someone jumps on a train, for example, and comes along and is robbing all the people of their data and giving up all their data. And, of course, it's an IT security firm saying, we're here to stop that happening. But it's that mining of data. Forget about your gold watches or whatever it might be. It's the mining of data.
How many of our listeners have taken the time to delve into their family histories? It's a fairly common thing these days. Just ask anyone in the lunchroom how far they can trace their own family back, and I reckon you'll find more people who can go beyond 150 years than not. Well, tracing genealogy is set to become even easier now that we're all carrying mobile phones. Matt, the way that the data is now able to be collected and processed and the connections that phones allow, modern phones are a powerful tool for this sort of thing, right?
They are, modern phones and all the various apps. And I think the main point of this story is really just, if you've been thinking about it, you've done a little bit of it, tinkered with it, go for it. Because now there are so many little apps. Find a grave app, Billion Graves. There are things that can look at graves that go back really as far as records exist. And then people keep adding to it. So people take photos of graves and they upload that. Yeah. And there's more information in the system. So we've all become data collectors. We've all got now a tool in our pocket that allows us to take better photos. And if we've got some old documents, you can take photos, and some of the apps allow you to take photos from multiple angles and then take all of those angles and create a picture that's the best version of that. Then they might do some OCR, so some of the old newspapers you see with very old writing in them, and it's a bit hard to search on that because it's not text, it's just a picture. But then some of these apps will convert that to a text, to actual text, so you can then search on it. It can be indexed. You can do so much more now than you ever could before. And it's years
amazing.
Ago. It is. Many years ago, I did a little bit of family tree stuff only because I had to go and do a talk to the Family History Society. So I thought I'd do a little bit about my family history, and they had some various tools and they used lots of bits of paper and lots of information that was more static. But I'm going back a few years ago now. All of the information now is not necessarily all available online, but it's getting better and better. But for you as the individual, you have got so many different things that you can use.
But it's when you break it down and think about it, the family history is kind of completely irrelevant. There's not a lot in there that is really usable for future use, but it's something that is just so interesting that it captures people's imaginations. And I don't know anyone who doesn't want to know what their family history is. Doesn't want to know. That's
right. There's some interest there, and how much time you spend researching it might be interesting. But we do it without thinking about it. You meet someone new. Oh, I think I knew your dad. What did your dad do? Did I see him at some event? Or
or even, you just get people coming up to you saying, oh, are you from this line of family?
Yeah.
And have you got a cousin or distant uncle or whatever?
That's right.
I've had a number of conversations like that.
Yeah, they recognise the surname and they think it might be someone else. So families, linkages are interesting to people. Exactly. You said, how do we use that for the future? Not sure, but just having that linkage there and understanding that is powerful. So there are so many tools out there. If you've thought about it, if you've tinkered with it in the past, then my advice is go for it now, because there are so many tools, so many ways to gather that. You can even have various sites that allow you to add that family history information and then invite other people to those, so other people that are linked to your family, not just randomly out there, but keep adding to that, because you might have some aunt, uncle somewhere that can add a bit, fill in a few extra steps in there. Yeah. And some of those family histories are pretty complicated when you start getting the Brady bunch, as I call them, the mixed families, when you've got different kids from different partners and they're combining up. But those family history sites, when you build that family tree, they account for all of that. They allow that to be accommodated in the building of those family trees, because it's not static like it used to be, or probably wasn't static before, but they used to be seen as very static in terms of there's a father, there's a mother, and there's kids, and then you break it down from there. There's so many combinations now. They're quite fascinating. So go for it. Do it. Find it. There's just so many ways to do it, and so many ways you can keep adding to the
and start taking photos of gravestones is what you're telling me.
That's basically it, yeah.
Now, AI might be a wonderful tool, but one thing that separates us from AI is emotion. AI will never understand human emotions. Matt, the worst word to use when predicting the future is never. is it not?
It is absolutely spot on. Never, never, never use the word never. Oh, no, I've used it. But it is. It's so many things we think will never happen. So I've made sure I make a habit of, I can't see that in the next 5 years or 10 years, but never is a scary word. When someone says that their father just died, we probably don't say, woohoo, that's a great thing. We know just by, I suppose, habit that we say that's sad or sorry to hear that. What can I do to help? There are certain reactions we have that most humans have. Now, whether we have true empathy when we say that or not, whether we really feel that, if you've lost your father, then you probably have got more of a connection with that. But maybe we're saying what we think is the right thing to say. But the words presumably have some emotion behind them for a human. But with generative AI, it can learn what it's meant to say. It can say, oh, I've heard these words. That person is, let's put a label on it, sad. Oh, my response to that, sorry to hear that. You don't need to be emotionally feeling that to actually say the correct words.
Look, it's interesting you say that because my son, who is on the spectrum, he learnt emotions by watching Thomas the Tank Engine. And so he had to learn how to express himself by picturing the faces of these engines. And you can see that Henry was angry or Thomas was sad, And so he used to explain how he was feeling by saying it outright. That's how he learned.
Yeah.
So much the same as AI would process that sort of stuff. There's a link to autism there.
You're learning essentially the responses to various words, and so that's where they're headed with this. So basically, there's some researchers at a university in Finland who are saying we think we can get AI to understand human emotions. Now, that's a big call because I don't understand human emotions and I'm a human. I don't understand emotions from my wife or my children sometimes, and I'm very close to them. So I don't know that we always can say we understand human emotions, but they believe just by taking the words, the context of those words, they can say, here's what this person's feeling. They're calling it these principles of mathematical psychology. So not psychology that's based around raw emotion, but around the raw context of it, if you like, using it like a maths, a binary, a yes or no associated with it. So with these models, they can predict emotions like happiness, irritation and anxiety based on what someone's saying. Yeah, so a person says certain words or they type certain words, then the AI tool can say, I know what's going on here. Now, I thought probably one of the most powerful things with that would be in terms of someone ringing a helpline, like a lifeline, like a Beyond Blue, and having a conversation. Now, they've got very good helpers at the other end of the line, but having some sort of AI listening in as well to say this person is suicidal, for example, this person is very anxious, maybe it's time to get some more professional help for them, that could be incredibly helpful, you would think. But even just having a chatbot, a helpline chatbot, because you're ringing up because you want to get your phone bill sorted out, then having AI listen in on that conversation or watch that conversation and say, okay, we need to get this person to someone else because they're getting pretty annoyed, frustrated, angry now, rather than just deal with them with a certain same way. So they might even be able to change the responses based on the emotions that they think are being felt. So at the moment, they believe they've got basically 6 emotions. Not many. How many emotions do we have? I would say unlimited, but they're saying 6 emotions. Happiness, boredom, irritation, rage, despair, and anxiety. And anxiety is probably a bigger issue in our society than we realise it is. There's a lot of things that people get triggered in terms of anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
So that could be really important as well. But it is quite strange to think that here we are talking about computers with emotion. We're not talking about computers with emotion. We're talking about computers seeing the right triggers to
being
understand.
Able to read emotion. Yeah.
So imagine in an office environment just listening around and going, oh, you better just keep an eye on James because he's getting a bit angry with some of the conversations happening. Imagine social media platforms saying, we're going to monitor what people are typing in comments and just say, do you need to just take a break? We're going to give you a 10-minute rest from here because you seem pretty angry. Yeah. Maybe that's everyone that seems angry on social media, but you seem pretty angry with what you're saying, and just have a little pause on that so you can just relax, or maybe that will make them more frustrated. But it is quite fascinating, I feel, just getting to that point where you can try to understand human emotions. It's maybe psychologists are going to be don't have a job, or maybe there'll be a lot more work for them as people are referred to psychologists with some of this information.
There you go. And that's all we have for you today, folks. Remember, if you are an alien living 2.5 billion light years away and you have received this message, and you would like to make contact with us here on Earth, please act quickly because your message is likely to arrive just as our sun will be exploding and our solar system will be totally defunct. So, a bit of a heads up there, folks. Thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt.
So at that point in time, would my Willow plant sensors be of any use, or they're probably done by then?
Oh, no. Still good. Still
Good. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's what I'm going out to get. I want
Just
to
as
get
long
some
as you've
plants.
got one of your descendants,
right.
still very switched on about that.
Several generations.
And caring, yes.
That's right. Right, well, I'm going to go and put some of those houseplants to good use and see what I can do with them for the long term.
Excellent. To see if you can get them to go longer than 6 months. I'm off to change all the passwords at my school yet again, and then maybe I'll go and change the cat litter box yet again because we still don't have a robot to do it yet. Thank you, Earthlings and aliens alike, for tuning in to another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's the podcast with more Matthew Dickerson than any other Tech Talk and podcast, so you know it's good. I'm James Eddy, wishing you all well for the week ahead. Remember, if you're listening in Australia, we are less than only 2 months away from spring. That's good news. All that delicious warmer weather comes with that. It's all waiting for us. Not too much winter left. If you're listening to us in the Northern Hemisphere, however, enjoy yourselves because summer is coming to an end soon for you guys. Whatever the weather, we'll be back next week in 1 week's time. Looking forward to seeing you then. Take care.